Cast your minds back to 2004. Lance Armstrong had just won his 6th consecutive Tour de France title. R. Kelly was in the charts, but not everything that happened was bad, because Kawasaki launched its first generation zx10r. A year later, I got a zx10r as my first ever 1000cc race bike, and it was great. We had some fantastic times together, and some maybe not quite so fantastic times.
Zone, the guys ran out a bit wide.
He's got in there pretty hard, you have to say. He's pretty lucky now.
He's underneath that bike, actually.
He looked a bit sore when we saw him. He finds Kawasaki laying on its side in the middle of it all. So we got number 9 that's down on the floor.
91,
can't be 91
Keith,
indeed.
91.
Thank you for that.
David Hewson.
David Hewson on the JJR Kawasaki.
I've always had a soft spot for that early ZX10R, so when a low mileage, nice condition bike popped up on one of my favourite forums, I just had to go and have a look. So here we have it, the new to me 8,500 miles from new 2004 ZX10R in very black. It has a few subtle upgrades, some I will admit better than others. The brakes were never a strong point on these bikes, but this has got the slightly uprated 0607 calipers, which conveniently go quite well with the black aesthetic of the rest of the bike. Paired to those is a big Brembo RCS master cylinder, which is awesome. I've used these on a couple of race bikes and they work really, really well. It's actually that good, I'm toying with stealing it for one of my classic superbikes, but I'll decide on that later. The not so good thing is grey Renthal grips. On a track bike, absolutely fine. On a road bike, not sold myself. So I have got some standard looking grips to go on it. The next good thing is a sprint steering damper. These bikes are flighty, I think is a good term. So a steering damper is excellent. How Kawasaki really got away with selling these bikes new without a steering damper is a bit of a mystery. But there you go, that's fitted, so that's good. A not so good thing is a crash bung drilled through the fairing panel. Come on people, really? The only thing it's really going to protect is the panel that you've ruined to fit it. They're a hideous thing. They look bad, you push the bike around, you smack your knee on them, that hurts and makes me swear. I just think they're an abomination. The other problem as well is, when you hit them, it just bends the thing it's bolted to, which tends to be an engine mount, so, you know, you're risking frames and engines and bits to save a panel that you've ruined to fit a crash bung. Just don't do it. Rant over. Above those is a ZX10 sort of traction pad on the tank. I don't normally have them on road bikes, but I'm not against it. There's a little crack in the side panel there, which is really common. If you over-tighten the screw, not the end of the world. Moving a little bit further down, the previous owner put some sort of protective film on the swinging arm to stop it rubbing. That's good. There's a bit more of it down there. And you can't struggle to see the particularly long Termignoni exhaust pipe. I actually quite like a big exhaust pipe. We don't need things to be too shouty loud. Standard thing with Termignoni. The carbon is really quite nice. The welding really isn't. But, you know, came free with the bike, so you're not going to complain too much. I have got the standard pillion seat, exhaust pipe, footrest hangers, and all that sort of stuff. The tyres look like they match, but they don't really, because the front is the correct size, but is dated 2012. The rear is the wrong size, it's a 180, not a 190, but it's dated 2019. So really, I'm going to have to put a pair of tyres in it. There is also one of the brackets that holds the top of the radiator on is cracked. I was told about that before I bought the bike. Not a problem. Yeah, so other than that, we're looking pretty good. A mostly standard, low mileage, really nice condition ZX10R. So you may be wondering, how is this low mileage, good condition road legal motorcycle going to be a project? Well, there is a bit of a plan. I want the bike mostly standard. I'm going to change the grips and a few little bits back. I'm going to take the crash bungs out. I'm going to give the bike a thorough service, and then I'm actually going to go and ride it. When I ride it, I am expecting certain things. I'm expecting it to feel quite fast, and I'm expecting it to be quite nervous. These bikes were renowned for being twitchy. Part of the reason for that is geometry. Compared to a CBR600RR that came out the year before, these bikes are the same weight, the same steering head angle, shorter wheelbase, and make 150 horsepower. So they do tend to spend quite a lot of their time on one wheel. And to be fair, when the two wheels are on the floor, they don't necessarily point in the same direction. Some of that is chassis geometry, and some of it is suspension. So after the test ride, if it rides exactly as I expect it to, then I'm going to delve into the world of suspension and see if we can make a bike that looks exactly the same, but rides better. So the first thing to do is get it undressed. And the advantage of that is it means I've got to take the crash bungs off. They will not be going back on.
Getting the belly pan and side panels off a ZX10 is normally really easy.
My hatred of these crash bungs grows deeper and deeper. So, it's a 17mm headed bolt that holds them on, but a normal 17mm socket, deep reach, doesn't fit down the hole. If you're making something that has to be undone with normal tools, make the hole big enough to get the tool in. My word, how annoying is that? I will admit, a slight foible on my part. I was given a trimmed down socket by the bloke I bought the bike off. I've left it at home. Luckily, I have 4 different sockets and one of them fits. But why does it have to be so difficult to remove a horrible piece of plastic tat?
Once I'd finished swearing, getting the side panels off was pretty easy. The nose cone was a little bit more of a challenge though.
So removing the side panels and belly pan, the bits you'd have to take off for a normal sort of oil and filter service, is really quite simple. There's no nasty hidden clips or anything like that. And then you get to the top fairing, and it all goes a bit Honda. You know, a selection of clips and fasteners and screws hidden behind other screws and fasteners and things just to make it a little bit more awkward. I actually had to admit defeat and crack the workshop manual open, but it is now apart. And I can get to the radiator, which is a good thing, because the first job I'm going to do is take the radiator off and get this bracket that should go from here down to here welded back on, so that, you know, the radiator isn't held on with a cable tie. It's actually not a bad fix, it is absolutely solid. I'd just like it to be a little more original. So that's it. I'm going to drain the coolant out of it, take the radiator off. So draining the water out is pretty straightforward. This is the water pump and this is the drain hole at the bottom. So I'm going to take the bolt out, let the antifreeze drain into an old bucket, and then it's pretty simple. I've just got a hose clip this side, the equivalent on the other side, a little breather at the top of the radiator, a couple of bolts, and the radiator can come off. Then I can take it over to my man to get it welded. So this is the offending bracket that is no longer welded to my radiator. And if it'll actually focus on it, you can see this section here looks like it's never really had any penetration in the weld, as in it's never actually glued the 2 bits of metal together, it's just sat on top. So I shall get that welded. The other advantage to having the radiator off is I can get into all the nooks and crannies around the front of the engine and everywhere and have a good look at it and then give it all a good clean. Now the bike's got 8,500 miles on the clock, and looking at the condition, I don't disbelieve it. The previous owner fully admitted it had done a couple of track days. That doesn't bother me because it is a sports bike, it is designed for this. And it's not like it looks like an old worn out sort of track hack. The chain and sprockets are the originals. I know nobody who ever puts original chain and sprockets back on a bike after converting it back from a race bike. The frame is nice and tidy. The engine's not got any massive scrapes on it or anything like that. All the wiring loom sort of looks about right, other than the cable type here, which I shall sort out. So yeah, I am happy with my purchase. While the radiator is off, I will get inside the engine and do valve clearances, because I've got easier access up here. It isn't actually due valve clearances on mileage, but I don't mind doing them, and it's, you know, another tick in a box. So it's going to have a big thorough service. I can give it a bit of a clean while the fairing's off, and before you know it, it'll be back up and running. So this is the original chain. It is now 17 years old and has probably seen better days. But I have a chain stretch measuring tool, and I have the bike in gear. I put a little load on it so it's tight, And that is actually still okay for stretch. So the chain itself hasn't really worn, even though it's not really been lubricated very much. The advantage of modern chains is, with the O-rings and X-rings or whatever, the lubricant actually stays in the roller, and all we're really doing when we lubricate them is lubricating the chain against the sprockets. So it's actually survived surprisingly well. What I might do is give it a good clean up, put some lube on it, and probably end up changing it anyway. While I'm in the mood for taking things apart, I'm going to take the seat off the little trim panels and remove the tank. That means I've got access to the airbox so I can see if the air filter is horrible or not, and then we're another stage closer to getting to spark plugs and valve clearances. One thing to look out for on these early ZX10s, in fact only first year bikes, is this hole here that screws the little trim panel onto the tank, because there's nothing behind here. So if you put a bolt in that's a little bit too long and you keep screwing it in, it will punch a hole in the fuel tank and then all your fuel falls out. It's not very good. I know this because one of my teammates managed to do it. On the second year bikes, the 2005 bikes, this was a blind nut, so you couldn't put a bolt all the way through it. Kawasaki obviously learned. But that's just one thing to watch out for on first year bikes, that fuel doesn't pour out of here.
I have to take the steering damper off to get the tank off, but the rest of the tank fittings are nice and quick.
Now we've got the tank off, there's two things to mention. Firstly, I appear to have got a K&N air filter, which is excellent, so I can take that out, give it a bit of a clean, and it'll do another few thousand miles. The other thing is important if you're looking at buying one of these, especially if it's been a race bike or you think it might have been crashed. Where these welds run here and also run down the back of the headstock, that's like the weak point in the frame. If the bike's had a frontal impact and it tries to push the front wheel backwards, what it tends to do is split these welds and sort of banana the frame open. So if you are looking at a second-hand one that might have been crashed, just lift the tank up, have a look down the back of these welds to see if it's cracked. So there is my K&N air filter. It's looking alright, but it is a little bit dirty, so it will benefit from a clean. So far, though, I'm happy with everything I'm finding. There's certainly nothing horrible that makes me think the bike's had a nasty history. I know the seller was really genuine and he seemed like a good guy, but it's always nice to take things apart and find out they are as good as you hoped.
Packaging on the bike is nice and snug, but that does mean it's a bit of a faff getting the airbox off because there's not a lot of room and you have to sort of twist it in the frame to pop it out the hole.
I've got the airbox off now, so we're down to the throttle bodies and we've got things like the pair valve and the spark plugs and bits under there. But I'm not going to do them today because it is getting a little bit late. To actually do the spark plugs and the valve clearances is a bit of a faff because you've got to take the top engine mounts off as well, because otherwise you can't get the stick coils out. It was a little bit of a design issue that, but there you go, that's how they are. Thank you for watching the first bit of my ZX10 project. I'm really pleased with how today's gone. I've not found any nasty surprises lurking underneath, and we've made good progress making one complete bike into lots of little bits of bike. Next time, I'll be doing a valve clearance service and changing the oil. But the biggest question right now is, Chinese or curry? Thanks for watching and join us again soon for some more motorbike fun.